Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. Today I'm going to be doing my February wrap up. This month I read 4 books, which is not as high as it usually is, but I'm still really happy about it because I think I just had a hard time reading books this month. It's just totally fine, it happens. But first let's talk about the videos that I made this month. I did a February TBR-ish type video where I talked about some of the books that I wanted to read this month. I stuck to that pretty closely. I think I only read one book that wasn't on that TBR, which is surprising for me, but also at the same time I feel like that's part of the reason why I had such a hard time reading. I also put up 2 book reviews this month. I did Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson, which I read in January and really loved. If you haven't read that book yet, definitely go check out that review and or just pick up the book. It's such a fantastic book. I think that even if you're someone who doesn't normally read nonfiction, it's totally readable, totally moving, and such a great book. I highly recommend it. The other book that I read was The Honor by Elif Shafak, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars, so you guys know I loved it. Elif Shafak actually tweeted out my video, which was crazy. Feel free to check out that review if you are interested in seeing why I love that book so much. I also did a winter book haul where I talked about basically the books that I got for my birthday and Christmas. So in terms of the books that I finished this month, the first book that I finished was Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes. This is a memoir slash self-helpy type book that I read. It's a really short book. It's like not even 300 pages. I don't have a physical copy anymore, but if you watch the TBR video, you can see it. It's really like short and like not even 300 pages, so it was such a super quick read. I like that book. I wasn't like super crazy about it, but I think it's a pretty solid book if you are looking for more books in that sort of self-helpy, motivational type of genre. The idea that Shonda Rhimes talks about is how she was basically, really succeeding as a television writer, but she was saying no to a lot of things because she was just really scared of the situations and she was holding herself back from a lot of opportunities because of that. So she decided to say yes to more things that were scaring her, which is a great concept. And she also just talks about, things like choosing to be healthy and when to say yes to her kids. She's also very aware of her privilege and the things that she's allowed to do because she is a successful television writer, the things she has access to, the people she has access to. Like, she's very aware of all those things and she writes about that openly, which is a great and refreshing thing to read because a lot of celebrities act like they do everything on their own and don't acknowledge the help that they get. So to see someone acknowledging the help that they get, I think was very helpful. I'm not a huge fan of Shonda Rhimes' writing style, which is probably why I don't watch any of her TV shows. She gets a little bit repetitive. I think this might be a book that works better on audiobook. I read it in physical form and the whole time I kept thinking of how conversational it was in style and it might have been better to listen to it, but I also like that I read it in physical form because there were some sections that I kind of skimmed. But in general, I feel like this book is just kind of like a TED Talk. So if you like that style, then you'll definitely like this book. The next book that I read was Half of a Yellow Sun by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This book actually took me a good 3 weeks to read, which is not the fault of the book. I think that was 100% me and where my head was at. I think also I had too high expectations after reading Purple Hibiscus and I needed to bring them down a little bit. So this story takes place in Nigeria in the 1960s when there is this sort of civil war breaking out in the area. You follow a bunch of different characters and you jump back in time a little bit, or you jump back and forth in time a little bit. All of those things are things that are difficult for me to enjoy in general. There are certain books that I love that pull it off really well, but for some reason in this book I wasn't super crazy about it. I kind of wish that we were following either specific characters or specific families very closely as opposed to jumping back and forth between all of these different characters. Although I know that the point of this book was to show how different people were dealing with the war and how they were affected by the war and things like that. So I understood the point of it, but I wasn't super pleased with the execution of it, which I think is why it wasn't a 4-star book for me. The writing in here is still super gorgeous and beautiful the way that I expected it to be. That's basically what propelled me through this book, even though there were sections of it that I wasn't crazy about, or like certain narrators or points of views I wasn't really crazy about. The writing just kept me going because she just has a way with words that is just so fantastic. So if you like Adichie and you haven't read it yet, you still should pick this up, but it's definitely not my favorite. Purple Hibiscus is still my favorite, but I still have Americana to read, so we'll see how it goes. The next book that I read was I'm Traveling Lona by Samuel Bjork. Hopefully I said his name correctly. He is a Norwegian crime writer. I believe this is his debut novel. The story starts off where this young girl is found hanging from a tree with a jump rope tied around her neck and with a sign around her that says I'm traveling alone. And then the special homicide unit in Oslo ends up reforming with the 2 key detectives being Holger Munch and Mia something or another. I can't remember what Mia's last name is. Something had happened to them in their past. Mia ended up basically forced to leave the force for reasons that you find out about in the book, and then they are joining back together for this case, and it turns out that this case is actually tied to these detectives personally somehow, which you find out about. This was a strong debut mystery. I feel like, especially for mystery novels that are at the beginning of a series, I'm a little bit tougher on them, partially just because I don't fall in love with the characters right away. It takes some time, but I think that this is pretty solid for a first in a series. I'll definitely be keeping an eye out for future ones. I think that Mia and Holger are a really strong detective pair. They balance each other out very well. If anything, I wanted more Mia and less Holger. That just might be a personal preference thing. And it's kind of nice to see a Norwegian crime fiction series that has two detectives at the helm as opposed to just one, and the one is usually a dude. So it's nice to have a pair as well as a female involved in the investigation. So I really like that. So if you're someone who reads a lot of the sort of Norwegian, Scandinavian type detective crime stories, this one definitely isn't as dark as some of the other ones I've read, but it's still on the darker side compared to like American mystery stories or even British mysteries. But if you like stuff that is in that style, I definitely do recommend it. It was a pretty good read. And the final book that I finished this month was The Good Lord Bird by James McBride. I just finished this one last night, so just getting it in under the wire. This is a historical fiction novel that takes place in the 1800s in the United States. You are following this little slave boy named Henry who ends up joining in with these abolitionists. They assume that he's a girl for some reason, and he never ends up correcting them, so he ends up basically going undercover as a girl to help get himself to freedom. And then it all sort of leads up to this famous historical event in US history where there was this raid by the abolitionists at Harper's Ferry in 1859, which sort of was a lead up to the Civil War. This was such a good book. I wasn't really sure what to expect out of it. I thought it was going to be a slightly more serious book, but this book is actually really, really funny. There's a quote on here that compares this book with Mark Twain, which I can definitely see. Like, it has that very pointed sense of humor, very clever commentary. It was really, really clever. There are parts of this that dragged a little bit while you're waiting to get to the events that are happening, but I think overall I just really enjoyed the characters in here. I think James McBride does a really fantastic job of painting a picture of what life was like during this time, especially as a slave or as a person of color in this country. The characters in the story are very much characters. Like, they are a little bit over the top and a little bit crazy, but really fantastic. There are some famous characters in here and a little bit of speculation about those characters, which I don't know how true they are. I'll have to do my own research to figure that out. But I think that this was just a really fun ride of a book, which I was not expecting from it. It still is pretty big. I mean, it's almost 500 pages, so it took me a little bit of time to read, but I totally enjoyed every page of this book. I would highly, highly recommend it. So yeah, that is everything that I read in the month of February. I also did an Underhypes readathon TBR video, which I forgot to mention earlier on. It's happening from Saturday the 27th up until Friday, March 4th. So I will link to my TBR video if you want to see the things I picked out that I want to read during the week. I'll also have links down below to my Goodreads as I usually do, so you can keep track of what I'm currently reading on there. So I will have a wrap-up video coming up at the end of this week, so you guys can check that out to see what I actually ended up finishing. So yeah, that was my February. Didn't read a lot of books, but I just definitely read some very good books, which is still all that I care about. I don't really care about the number of books that I read. So feel free to leave a comment down below letting me know how your February went reading wise. What was your favorite book that you read this month? I always love reading those comments. So yeah, that's all I have for now. Thanks for watching.